Let's talk about it. Because the Lord saw fit to burden me with what many are enduring and struggling with, let's talk about the 80 and the 20. You knowing what you have at home with the 80%, but part of you wants to, thank you, Holy Spirit, explore the 20. Here's what's happening, what the enemy is doing. The Lord never said he wouldn't test us. He said we wouldn't be tempted beyond how we could have an exit strategy, beyond how we can get out of whatever the enemy is trying to tempt us with. So the Lord uses that for a test. The thing is, y'all, it wasn't even my test. But I say all of that to say he's placed upon me that many of you are feeling and currently struggling with, and this is what the enemy is doing, especially for the standing spouses. Starting to contemplate, thank you, Holy Spirit, what that 20% looks like. And let me say this, that 20% is not always another man or another female. That 20% can just be the mindset of being free, the mindset of doing this on your own, the mindset of taking alternative routes. Thank you, Holy Spirit. The enemy cannot take what God has for you, but he could have you look at it through a cracked lens, through a broken lens, through a damaged lens, through an emotional lens. Thank you, Holy Spirit. And when you look at it that way, all of a sudden you no longer desire that thing. So for those of you who you know God has called you to stand for your marriage, guard your thoughts, be sober, be alert, because some of you may already be feeling this, and I know as far as those of you on my TikTok, you are, because you've messaged me about it or you've left comments about it. But this is what the enemy is doing. He's starting to give you just the thought of wanting to explore that 20%. This other man, that smile looks kind of nice. This other woman, that wave all of a sudden looks kind of nice. This opportunity looks kind of nice. The thought of me just moving on and being by myself looks kind of nice. He's trying to make you want to walk away from the promise. And one thing Holy Spirit gave me last night, he's doing this because breakthrough is ahead. But let me say this. I don't mean full restoration yet. I don't necessarily mean your spouse returning yet. But when I say breakthrough in the situation, you now having clarity. Thank you, Holy Spirit. You now having revelation. You now having the next set of instructions. You now even having provision. That could be your breakthrough. The moment God says, expect breakthrough, I'm getting ready to speak, you're getting ready to change positions or change seasons, you immediately think that breakthrough pertains to the thing you're currently in. Oh, he said breakthrough, my spouse must be returning. Thank you, Holy Spirit. He said restoration, he must be ready to restore my marriage. Restoration could be restoring your hope, restoring your peace, restoring your joy, restoring your laughter. So remember I said, don't limit God. I see a threshold. I see in the spirit like you're crossing over. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Not necessarily into your promised land yet. Some of you, you have. But for many of you, you're crossing over. And when I say crossing over, you're transitioning from one space to another space. The enemy does not know what's up ahead, but he pays attention to angelic movement in the spiritual realm. All he sees is that angels have been dispatched on your behalf to watch over you, to guard you, to protect you, to cover you. He's now trying to entice you with that 20% mentality. Do not fall for this bait. Do not take the bait. Some of you, thank you, Holy Spirit, are even contemplating, is this God giving me these thoughts? Because now I'm thinking maybe I could be better by myself. Now I'm thinking that maybe when he said he was going to restore it, he meant restore a new relationship and not the marriage that I currently have. Maybe I heard it all wrong. Get out of that space. Come out of that space. Don't take his bait, because then you're going to go down that rabbit hole. Then you're going to start pre-rehearsing everything that the enemy is trying to give you those thoughts for that are not in alignment with what the Lord said. Maybe God is telling me, that my season is over and the door has closed and it's time for me to transition. Thank you, Holy Spirit. I hear him saying, like when my God, he's so good. When Noah was on the ark and the door was closed, there were times when Noah thought it was time for them to get out. And if you remember this story, when the flood was over, he thought like it was time for them to get out. So he would send the bird, and I believe it was the dove, if I'm not mistaken. He would send the dove out to go and see, is it dry land? Is it safe to exit yet? So many of you, you're getting to that space where it's safe to exit. My God, this is new revelation even for me. You wonder if it's safe to exit because you've been in the ark so long. You've been in this position so long. So Noah kept sending the dove out to see if it was dry land. But the moment the dove didn't return, that's when he knew, like, okay, there's dry land. I'm not saying this season for divine separation is over, but remember I said you're getting ready to transition into something else. With that being said, he's paying attention to that. So he's starting to give you the thoughts to see, will you step out the ark too soon? Will you go ahead and come out now? Will you go ahead and go for that 20%? Be very mindful of, and like I said, it's not even just another man or another woman. You just start having thoughts, you know, my money is good. I've got promoted. I can afford my own place. I can leave the city. You know, I can move to another state. That's how the enemy deceives you. He don't just present you with something that doesn't look pleasing. It doesn't look like a good appetizer. He's not going to serve you carrots. He's going to serve you that filet mignon. You know, he's going to serve you something that looks like, my gosh, this looks good. This opportunity looks good. This 20% looks good. It's really just flipped around. Many of you, your spouses were enticed at one point with the 20%. They left the 80 to go after the 20. The 20 doesn't, the counterfeit, thank you, Holy Spirit, doesn't have to be another man or a woman. The counterfeit can be they left for a counterfeit opportunity. They left with that counterfeit mindset of, I'm finally free. I'm finally broken away. I'm finally able to find myself again, even though they saw through a jacked up lens as well. So the same way that it worked on your spouse, and you know that your stand has not been in vain. You know that your prayers have not been in vain. But suddenly, all of a sudden, it's starting to look like, that opportunity looks pretty good. That mindset of being on my own and just starting over, something I was once afraid of. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Now, all of a sudden, I'm not fearful if I have to start over. Be protected with your thoughts. The enemy, I said, he will meet you in your feelings, because you now have the feeling of security, the feeling of, I got my joy back, my peace back, my hope back. I once couldn't see my life without them, but now maybe it's not so bad. Maybe, just maybe, get out of that place. When God starts pre-warning you and Holy Spirit starts nudging you like, don't entertain that, don't step into that. When you do, and I explained it like this to one of my mentees on my coaching calls yesterday, I don't watch horror movies anymore, but at one point I did. And you know how they say vampires cannot come in unless you invite them? So when the enemy entices you with something, basically he's like a vampire standing outside your door. When you accept that thought, when you receive that thought, when you entertain that thought, thank you, Holy Spirit, now you have given him an invitation to come in. When you do that, thank you, Holy Spirit, the Lord is saying you've given the enemy legal rights to your mind, to your situation. Then you're wondering, why does it seem like all hell is breaking loose? Things are getting worse. Oh my gosh, I'm under attack. Did you open a door for the enemy? Did you let that vampire in? Did you entertain what he was enticing you with? Basically, he's just knocking at your door to see if you will open. He can't come in unless you allow him to. You gave him legal rights to make your mind, thank you, Holy Spirit, the devil's playground. Guard your ear gates. Guard your eye gates. That 20% will not supersede that 80%, because that 80% is where your blessing is at. That 80% is where your covering is at. That 80% is what God is going to breathe back on. Your spouses fell for it at the moment. God allowed it because, for one, it's making you bigger. It's making you better. Thank you, Holy Spirit. It's making you wiser. It's making you stronger. It's developing a relationship with you. He allowed that 20%. Thank you, Holy Spirit, because that 20% that your spouse fell for is now a thorn in your side. That thorn in your side, Paul asked, Lord, pull it from me, like remove this thorn. The Lord said, my grace is sufficient. Paul cried out 3 times. Many of you are like, God, just take this thorn away. Take these feelings away. I don't want to keep thinking about this man. I don't want to keep praying for this woman. I don't want to keep thinking about restoration. Take the desire away. I don't want to want them anymore. Take it away. How many of you are crying out to God or have cried out to God? I don't want to pray for them. I don't want to keep thinking about them. I don't want to keep having these feelings that I'm having. That is the thorn in your side. The Lord is not going to remove that, because, for one, that's what brought you to his feet in the first place. 2, that's what's allowing you and him to be intimate and deep in your relationship. 3, that's also what's going to get you to purpose. Thank you, Holy Spirit. The Lord works all things together for your good. Nothing that you went through, nothing that you're going through, or nothing that's coming will ever be wasted. It's not in vain. God uses everything.